Hello and welcome back to Lost in Sci-Fi and Fantasy. I'm your host Leo, and today we are talking about the 1982 film Tron. Now, before we get into that though, I do have some updates as to what's been going on. As you might have seen on the updates so far that I've been doing, one was just kind of an introductory thing where I showed some of the books and whatnot that I'll be taking. And the second one was me kind of showing a little bit of the interior of the car that I got for this journey. Yeah, things are getting complicated very fast, and it's a thing. But yes, we will be doing some more updates as to like what's going on and whatnot that's happening. As of right now, I am currently in the final week before I have to make my trip out to where I need to go. And yeah, stress is mounting as that approaches, and figuring out how I'm going to fit everything in my car is a growing concern. But yes, it's working out so far, and I'm just adjusting to the idea, and I'm getting there. I'm getting there. It's a process. But yeah, it's getting close. Whether or not I'm going to massively pre-record episodes is still up in the air. I need to try and get Wild Arms finished in time for me to have that episode out. I'm going to try to get that episode out before I go so that it's there. I don't know if I'll release it early or not, but I'll at least get it recorded and put up to where it will at least release around, well, it would technically release the day I got back. Anywho, I'm trying to decide on whether or not what I do with that episode, because there's going to be a couple of weeks where I just kind of do not a whole lot in terms of progress on the challenge. But regardless, the idea is that the challenge will go on. It will have the updated rules to where I will probably toggle between doing a computer game or a Vita game and a PS5 game or PlayStation game, because I'm not going to have all of the time in the world anymore to do it. So I'm going to have to kind of divide my time up between maybe a small game on my Steam Deck while I'm out in the field and a bigger game on my PS5 when I get back, because I will have 6 days, technically about 12 days every month, in order to just kind of play games. So we'll see how that goes. As for episodes for Lost in Sci-Fi and Fantasy, some episodes I might record out in the field, and some I might record back at home. We'll figure that out. But yeah, the idea there is I have a couple of things downloaded for me to watch out in the field, and then I can potentially record an episode on my laptop, put it together, and get it sent out at the same time. But it is a question of how well that will work. Yes, exciting times. But with all that said, we can go ahead and start kind of diving into the episode that is Tron. So this movie is very interesting to me. So I watched it once when I was a kid. My mom showed it to me, and I was very curious about it at the time. I believe because there was the new Tron movie coming out, or at least there was like rumors about it coming out. I don't fully remember. But I remember being very confused about both that Tron movie and the Tron Legacy. And overall, if you look at the Tron series, like the franchise, it's a bit of a mess. So currently there is the 2 Tron movies. Then there's a kind of smattering of Tron comics, mostly that came out around the time of Tron Legacy, to kind of get us caught up on, what happened between Tron and Tron Legacy. And then there's I think there's a TV show, which is Tron Evolution, which I think is also kind of a prequel to Legacy series. And then there is the upcoming Tron Ares. There's also a couple of games. There's the Tron game that came out, I believe, around the same time as this movie, or maybe before. I don't fully know. But then there is the Tron 2.0 game, which I believe is roundly considered not canon. But yeah, anyway, it's a complicated series. And this film is what started it all. And the techniques and whatnot that are implemented are very interesting. It's one of the earlier films to use CGI. And you can feel it for sure. Because it's one of those things where they're like, oh man, we've got this new technology. We want to use it. So we're going to use it for most of the film. Now, to be fair, not all of like what do they even call it? The system? Yeah, I don't even know what they call it. Because I know in, in Tron Legacy, it's called the grid. But that is a wholly separate situation from what happens in the first Tron system that they're in. So, in this system thing, most of the elements are CGI, but there are a lot of like hand-drawn things, especially near the end of the film. You really start to notice the hand-drawn stuff. But yeah, it's very interesting. They seem to have filmed everything in black and white, and then like hand-colored all of the like lines and whatnot to make them pop. And I think this is probably one of the quintessential films that is kind of used as the 80s neon example, because a lot of the aesthetics that you see when things are referred to back to the 80s is neon, and this movie is that personified. It's kind of beautiful in a way. One of my favorite elements in this film is fairly early on, you see a helicopter that has all these like neon outlines on it as it comes in and lands, and that's an in real life helicopter, not even a Tron or system or whatever the hell they call the world in this one helicopter. But yeah, so the plot is relatively simple, yet also kind of complex. So the movie opens right off the bat with stuff happening. It opens with the program Clue going in and trying to get a file on behalf of its user, Flynn. Now, the reason that Flynn is having Clue try to get this program or this file out is because he is trying to get evidence that his intellectual property was stolen. So he was working at this company, Encom, and was trying to, I guess he was using company resources to develop games, and he was getting ready to potentially strike out on his own when all of a sudden he goes to try to access the file and it's just not there. And all of a sudden, a couple of months later, boom, these games that he had made are just released. And the other guy takes credit for it, gets promoted all the way up to senior executive officer or whatever. And he then creates a program called the Master Control Program based off of a chess program that Flynn would play chess against. Modified it to kind of run the whole system. But that program has been growing exponentially as it's been scalping programs from all around the internet? ? But he's been scraping all these programs and forcing them, taking elements from them and then forcing them to fight, essentially, in the game system. Anyway, Clue gets de-rezzed and is gone. Because of this security breach, the Master Control Program is able to kind of vaguely pinpoint that it is Flynn and has all people with level 7 access suspended. That causes Alan to go up to Dillinger's office. That's the other guy who took the games and ran. He's forced to go up to Dillinger's office to figure out what's going on. And because of the security breach, there's, a whole lockdown, and his program, Tron, has been quarantined. And so when asked what Tron is supposed to be, he's supposed to be a security program that's independent of the other programs, to kind of act as a watchdog to make sure that all the other programs are running, cleanly, not selling off information or meddling in other things. And he implies, and I think straight up says, that it would also monitor the Master Control program. And the Master Control program can't have that because he's had his fingers in a lot of different pies. So, at the threat of outing the CEO as a thing, he's kind of forced to go along with the Master Control program's plan, while Alan goes to visit his girlfriend, who's working on a laser thing that zaps and digitizes objects. And she thinks, oh, well, with that, it might be Flynn, who she used to date. The reason for why they broke up is never really stated, except for maybe the fact that he was a little bit too childish. Flynn is currently running an arcade shop where the games that he created are massively popular, and the arcade that he runs is also massively popular. But he meets up with them and explains that he's the one that created the games, and that's why he's trying to get into the system, is to find the proof. He's not trying to embezzle or anything. He's just trying to get the proof that he's the one that created the games. They agree to let him get in because they kind of have a semi-mutual interest of wanting to... Well, Alan wants to get his program Tron back so that they can, look into the Master Control program and maybe destroy it. And Flynn wants to get the evidence. Laura is just kind of there for the ride. Now, while they break in, Flynn is getting the evidence that he needs when the Master Control program starts talking to him, and in an act of desperation shoots him with the laser because for some reason the terminal is right in line of sight of the laser, and he gets sucked into the game grid or whatever it's called. Again, I don't remember the name of the thing. But yeah, so he's brought in, imprisoned, and then forced to play some of the games. He plays like a disc game thing that's like or not disc. The one that he plays is like a polo kind of thing, and then he's put into the light bikes. And in the light bikes, him, Tron, and another program named RAM are able to escape and go on the run. They spend most of the movie on the run. They eventually get kind of spotted by some tanks and separated in an explosion where Ram is fatally injured and eventually dereses after learning that Flynn is actually a user and not a program. There's a light implication of like a bit of a religion that's kind of going on. It's not dug into too much, except for like a handful of scenes here and there. But basically, the programs are kind of divided into two factions. Those who are willing to renounce the users or the belief in the users and kind of forge their own path, and the ones that wholeheartedly believe in the users, that they have the program's best interests at heart, etc., etc. And of course, this gets a little bit shattered by Flynn, who's like, yeah, we're about as clueless as you guys are, but, we make it work, I guess. Yeah, so Flynn finds out in this time that he has some control over the world because he is a user, so he's able to, like, build a ship to fly about, but he has terrible control with it. A lot of things also kind of pop up, but disappear frequently. Like, for example, at the beginning of the film, when Clue is trying to escape or get the data or escape with the data. It's not entirely... I don't know if he had the data or not at the time, but he had a little guy with him called a bit. It can only say yes or no, but it's like a little companion. Now, I don't know if this is like a thing that just kind of comes with the vehicles or not, whatnot, but Clue does send the bit off, and it's not seen again until Flynn is flying his like ship thing, and the bit comes in for a little bit as just kind of like a comedic bit, I guess, to mock his driving, and then when he crashes the thing, it just leaves. It's gone. It doesn't show up again in the film at all. In fact, I don't know if the bits even show up in Tron Legacy or other Tron media at all. I have no clue. But yeah. Yeah, so after this, he crashes because Tron is trying to get to the I.O. tower to communicate with his user Alan, or as he calls him, Alan 1, and try to, get the final bit of program to be able to destroy the Master Control program. But he goes to meet, presumably, because the thing is, the programs take on the look of their users. That's just kind of what happens. Some of the descriptions on like wikis and whatnot say that they were designed in purposefully to look like their users, but that I don't think that's the case. I think it's supposed to be like a coincidence, like they just, because the guy created them, they look like them, that kind of thing. So it's implied that each of these programs that have the faces of people in the outside world were created, or at the very least used by those people. Now, Tron makes a bit of a diversion to go see the program that looks like Laura. She has a name, Yori. She looks like Laura, so it's implied that it's either a program that Laura uses or that Laura created, but she's more like the mechanical side of things, kind of, because she's working on a big laser thing. It's confusing, especially when they then go to the I.O. tower and talk to the Guardian, which looks like the old guy that was also working on the laser thing. It's very weird. Because, one, those are like two completely separate things. Her program was working on like a solar sail game that was getting ready to be shipped, I think. And yeah, so they run around. They are able to get the message off to Alan. Alan gives the program, the rest of the program to Tron, and then they set off. Meanwhile, Flynn's just kind of walking around. He impersonates a guard, kind of starts following around the guards a bit, and then he, I guess, follows the guards to attack Tron, gets knocked off the solar sailor, but is able to hang on, and as they're going, he is helped back up by Tron, and they make their escape towards the Master Control program. They are then pursued by Sark, who rams their solar sailor and is able to capture Flynn and Yori, and they presume that Tron is dead. Now, that's a thing that happens a few times in this, where they just kind of presume that the other people are dead. So, in the explosion that separates Flynn and Ram from Tron, it's presumed that Flynn and Ram are dead, or derezzed. And in this case, they thought that Tron was derezzed, but he wasn't. But, yes. Flynn and Yori are left to die on Sarg's ship, as if he leaves the ship and everything on it are automatically derezzed. Though, after Flynn proves to Yori that he is like a user and, can provide power and get them out of the situation, they end up in like a small control room thing that is still connected to like the derezzed ship, which is just like a wireframe at this point. And it's still going, but they're on like a separate thing, I guess. It's again, this part of the movie gets very confusing on like how things work. But yeah, they just kind of hang out. They follow it all the way to the beam. He jumps in after kissing Yori for some reason. He merges with the Master Control program, which gives Tron just enough time to get the disc in. And this is after Tron fights with Sarg and hits him in the head, but the Master Control program stops him from de-rezzing and gives him a ton of power, which makes him go big. And then he goes to try to stop Tron, but Tron's able to get the disc in with Flynn's help. Flynn is then beamed out of the program, or the world thing. Tron and Yori are able to make their escape with the elderly guys, and they see the birth of a new program thing, and the world is beautiful. Flynn comes out and he sees that the message that he created the games prints. He takes it, starts running with it, yay. The CEO guy, Dillinger, he goes to look at his computer and sees the message showing that Flynn got the thing, essentially, and knows that he's ruined. Then it jumps to Flynn having taken over the company, somehow. Presumably, he showed the evidence that he created the thing and was able to somehow oust the guy and take over his position for reasons. And then that's how it ends. The next movie, Tron Legacy, he had created a whole different world called the Grid and was trying to make a perfect system kind of thing. I don't know. We'll talk about that later at a different time. Yeah, overall, I quite enjoyed this film. It's pretty breakneck pace. It's only about an hour and a half long. And like I said, when it gets going, and it gets going from the get-go, it stays going pretty much the entire time. It's really good. I mean, Jeff Bridges is fun in it. He gives off I always confuse Jeff Bridges in this film with Kurt Russell, because they kind of have a bit of a similar vibe, character-wise. At least Kurt Russell in The Thing has a similar vibe to Jeff Bridges in this film. Yeah. Some things that I do like is that going back and rewatching Tron can give you a pretty good appreciation for the elements that they decide to take and use in later media. For example, like the Solar Sailor, they bring back in a lot of things. They also use Clue is the main antagonist of the sequel. So it's cool. It's fun. Though they use some of the game elements in the sequel, but it's kind of prominent mostly in this game. And then it's very curious to see what happens in the next movie, Tron Ares, which sadly seems like it won't have what it rightly deserves, and that is a Tron Legacy style Daft Punk soundtrack. But alas, supposedly they were going to do it before they decided to split up. But maybe, fingers crossed, maybe they'll come back together to do it real quick and then continue. Who knows? Probably not, sadly. But that comes out in 2025. I'll probably wait until closer to the release of that to see about tackling Tron Legacy. Very excited to talk about it at some point. And I might even, maybe, at some point talk about Tron Evolution, which is the weird Disney XD TV series that I don't even... it just kind of appeared at some point and just existed. It's very odd. But yes, I think that is pretty good for there. But I do highly recommend the movie. So feel free to give it a look-see. But yes, so updates on other things. So with the challenge, things are going okay. I'm getting very, 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 very close to the end of Wild Arms. I just need to do that final push and get through it. Then I will try to play a second game really fast. Like, it's a relatively short game. I should be able to hopefully get through it pretty fast. If I don't, oh well, I'll still talk about it. Because if I don't get through it, it's because I don't plan on finishing it. That's pretty much going to be the thing. It won't be an official mark on the list, but that's kind of the idea there. I'll talk about it more in the actual episode of the challenge. And then, yes, as I said at the beginning of the episode, things are getting pretty close to me going. I have to make sure I get all of this stuff, recorded and ready. Like, I think I actually do need to record one more episode of this podcast before I go, because I want to try to spend the few days I have to adjust to living in a new space, doing just that, adjusting to living in the new space. So yeah, it's going to be a thing. So I'm going to have to try to pick out another episode to do really fast this week for Lost in Sci-Fi and Fantasy. I haven't quite figured it out yet, but we'll get there. But anyway, with that said, thank you guys so much for listening or watching / listening. If you are doing that on YouTube, feel free to give it a like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube, or rate and review it on any podcast catcher of your choice. With that said, once again, thank you guys so much for listening. I will talk to you guys next week. Goodbye.